Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're tackling something pretty important if you're looking at career progression, nailing that security supervisor job interview.
Yeah, it's a big step.
We've got this really practical UK career advice guide here, and honestly, it's packed with stuff that could really make a difference when you're, sitting across from that interview panel. So whether you're already in security and looking to move up, or maybe you're exploring a leadership role, this should be really helpful for you.
Exactly. And this guide, it really covers the whole process, doesn't it? From the kind of questions they'll probably ask, how to, properly research the company,
Right.
right down to the details like, well, what you should wear.
So our mission today really is to dig into this guide,
Mm.
pull out those key insights, the actionable stuff that'll help you walk into that interview feeling, well, prepared and confident.
Let's do it. Where should we start? The questions.
Yeah, let's get straight into the interview questions. That's probably what's on most people's minds. This guide gives it a great look at what employers are really trying to figure out about you.
And one of the big ones is handling high pressure situations. Think like an emergency evacuation.
Right. And it's not just saying you stay calm.
No, absolutely not. It's how that calmness turns into real effective action. The guide uses that evacuation drill example. It really highlights needing clear communication, sticking to procedures,
Mhm.
So when you're thinking about your answer, you need to show how you stay composed. Is it your tone of voice? Do you focus on facts? How do you delegate? They want proof, not just a claim.
Yeah, exactly. So for you listening, really think back. Find those specific times you kept your head under pressure and made good calls. How did you actually demonstrate control? What did you do?
Good point.
Okay, another tricky one the guide brings up. Enforcing unpopular policies. We've all had to do that at some point, right?
Oh, definitely. And it's not just about laying down the law. It's about handling that resistance, carefully while still maintaining authority and keeping things safe.
So how do you do that?
Well, the guide talks about communicating clearly, explaining the reasons behind the policy, actually listening to people's concerns, but also being firm and respectful. You need compliance, but you want buy-in if possible.
Like that example they gave about tightening access control.
Exactly. Gradually getting people on board. So for you, when you prep for this question, think about a time you enforced a tough rule. How did you explain the why? How did you handle pushback? How did you get people to cooperate in the end?
That's great advice. Okay, shifting gears a bit, but still super relevant today. Cybersecurity threats. The guide dives into this too.
It really shows how the security role has changed, doesn't it? It's not just physical security anymore, not by a long shot.
So what are they looking for here?
Speed and effectiveness, basically. Quick identification of the threat, a solid response like isolating affected systems, which is crucial to stop things spreading.
Right, containment.
Yeah, containment. And then the follow-up, updating security measures, the example of tweaking firewall rules after a phishing attempt, that's a good concrete illustration.
So for you listening, it's about showing you're aware of digital security. Even if it's not your main focus, you need to show you understand the basics, the proactive steps. That's a real plus.
Definitely. You need that baseline understanding now.
Okay. The guide also talks about handling significant security challenges. This is where you can really tell a story, right?
Precisely. This is your chance to show how you handle real problems under pressure. The guide suggests outlining the situation, what you specifically did, and what the outcome was or what you learned.
Like their example of dealing with a spike in unauthorized access attempts.
Yeah, tightening protocols, upping patrols, updating monitoring. It paints a picture. So remember, focus less on just describing the problem and more on your actions and the impact they had. That's what they want to hear.
Makes sense. Okay, moving towards the team side of things. Performance evaluations and giving feedback. How does the guide frame that?
But this really taps into your leadership potential. It stresses giving regular, constructive feedback, not just criticism, but positive reinforcement too, to help your team develop skills and feel accountable.
Like acknowledging improvements.
Exactly, like the example of recognizing better response times. Feedback isn't just for fixing problems. So for you, it's about showing you're committed to your team's growth through, open and honest communication. How do you spot areas for improvement? And how do you give that feedback constructively?
Good points. And sticking with the team, what about actual hands-on experience with security systems and tech?
Ah, yeah, the practical stuff. This is where they want concrete examples. CCTV, access control, alarms, what have you actually used?
They don't just want theory.
No way. The guide suggests talking about specific times you managed or maybe even troubleshooted these systems and how that helped security. Like their example, integrating CCTV with patrols to speed up response times. That's a solid example.
So, highlight the tech. And crucially, how you used it to make things more secure.
Bingo. That's the key.
Okay, another core supervisory skill. Prioritizing tasks and managing time, especially when things get hectic.
Absolutely critical. Interviewers want to see you can juggle, basically. How do you focus on what's most urgent while still keeping the routine stuff going, especially when everything seems to be happening at once?
Like the example in the guide, prioritizing high-risk areas during a busy shift.
Yeah, and being adaptable as new information comes in. So explain your process. How do you decide what's urgent? How do you organize your time? And how do you communicate about these competing demands?
Right, communication again, which leads nicely into the next point, talking about complex security stuff with non-technical people.
This is such an important skill, being able to translate the jargon. The guide has a great analogy for this, comparing unusual login patterns to someone trying different keys in a lock.
That's helpful.
And using visuals. So for you, it's about showing you can simplify things, make sure everyone understands what they need to do, regardless of their technical background. Got any examples of explaining techie stuff simply?
Good question to ask yourself.
Yeah.
Okay, what about certifications and training? How important are those?
They show your commitment to the profession. The guide mentions the SIA license, pretty standard in the UK, right?
Yep.
And things like conflict management, first aid. These aren't just badges, they're practical skills, like the example of using de-escalation techniques from training during an altercation.
So, be ready to list your relevant certs and training.
And explain how they've prepared you for a supervisor role. Don't just list them, connect them to the job.
Makes sense. Now, inevitably in teams, there's conflict. How does the guide suggest tackling questions about resolving team conflict?
This probes your leadership, communication, and problem-solving skills. The guide's example is good, bringing team members with different shift issues together for a calm chat, then adjusting the rota, finding a win-win.
So focus on the process.
Yeah. How do you make sure everyone's heard? How do you dig down to the real cause of the conflict? And what's your approach to finding a solution that works for everyone? That's what they want to understand.
Got it. And beyond resolving conflict, what about generally motivating and managing the team?
This is core leadership stuff. The guide talks about positive feedback, recognizing good work, organizing tasks clearly.
Keeping things efficient?
Right, but also keeping morale up. And dealing with issues fairly and quickly. That example of assigning duties clearly during a busy event that helps both efficiency and morale.
So think about your strategies. How do you keep your team engaged? How do you recognize success? How do you handle disagreements fairly?
Exactly. Have those examples ready.
Okay, let's loop back to some fundamentals. Securing a facility against unauthorized access.
This is about showing you understand risk assessment and layered security physical controls, monitoring, the works. The guide mentions routinely checking access logs as a proactive step.
So explain your understanding of layered security.
And the proactive things you do, not just reacting, but preventing.
And what about ensuring the team itself is trained and prepared?
Also crucial. The guide points to regular drills, workshops, assessing performance, keeping people motivated.
Like debriefing after a drill.
Yeah, exactly. Debriefing after scenarios to see what worked, what needs improvement. So you need to explain your methods for training, checking preparedness, and keeping the team sharp and motivated.
Okay, how about understanding the big picture, the key components of a full security plan?
This shows strategic thinking. The guide lists the essentials: risk assessment, access control, emergency plans, staff training, regular reviews. You need to know all these pieces.
And how they fit together.
Right, like their example reviewing CCTV coverage and tweaking patrol routes to cover gaps. It shows you understand the whole system. So demonstrate you know what goes into a robust security strategy.
Okay, a sensitive one now. Suspected employee misconduct. How does the guide say to approach this?
Carefully and professionally. It stresses discreet investigation, focusing on facts, not jumping to conclusions, and really important, strictly following company policy.
So keep it by the book.
Absolutely. The example emphasizes careful observation and following procedure. Your takeaway: stress your commitment to fairness, confidentiality, and sticking to the rules in these tricky situations.
Right. What about actually developing or implementing security policy? Any experience there?
This shows initiative, not just following rules, but helping shape them. The example is good. Revising an access control policy for after-hours entry, then training staff on it.
So, if you've done something like that,
Briefly describe the policy, your role, and the positive impact it had. Keep it concise but clear.
the security world changes fast. How important is staying updated?
Hugely important. The guide emphasizes continuous learning, reading industry news, training, networking. They even mention exploring biometric tech at a UK security expo as an example.
So show you're proactive about learning.
Definitely. Show how you stay current. What publications do you read? What training have you done recently?
Good point. Okay, communication during an incident. What's key there?
Clarity and calmness under pressure. Talking to your team, emergency services if needed, making sure everyone knows what's happening and what to do.
Like the alarm trigger example.
Yeah, clearly telling the team the plan, contacting emergency services, ensuring everyone knows their role. Highlight your ability to keep order and ensure an effective response through clear talk, even when things are tense.
And if the worst happens, a security breach.
Then it's about effective response and following protocol. The guide mentions containment first, then clear communication, and finally, steps to prevent it happening again.
Like the example of dealing with the unauthorized person trying to get into a restricted area.
Exactly. Alerting the team, securing the area, escorting them out, and then reviewing how they got that far. So describe the steps you'd take to contain it, and crucially, how you'd learn from it to prevent it next time.
Makes sense. And ensuring the team actually understands all these protocols. How do you make sure it sinks in?
Repetition and checking. The guide suggests regular briefings, maybe tailoring communication, and then verifying understanding like through drills, or even just asking them to explain a procedure back to you.
So, explain your methods for getting the message across clearly.
And making sure it's actually understood and they can act on it.
Okay, risk assessments. How do you approach conducting one?
This is about being proactive, identifying threats before they become incidents. The guide talks about systematically identifying risks, analyzing their potential impact, and then suggesting ways to mitigate them.
Like spotting poor CCTV coverage.
Exactly. Identifying that weak spot and flagging it as a priority. Show you understand how to look for vulnerabilities and address them methodically.
Security often means making quick decisions under pressure.
Yep. You need to show you can stay calm and act fast to keep people safe. The guide's example is good. Approaching a suspicious person near a restricted area and taking action when they couldn't produce ID.
So have an example ready.
Definitely. Describe a time you had to make a quick, decisive call and what the positive outcome was.
And finally, reporting upwards. How do you communicate incidents or updates to senior management?
Clearly, concisely, and appropriately. The guide advises timely, accurate reports using whatever formal system is in place, but crucially, adjusting the technical detail for your audience.
Don't bamboozle them with jargon.
Exactly. Summarize the incident and impact succinctly, as in their example. Highlight your skill in tailoring communication for different levels in the organization.
Okay, one more on communication within your own team. How do you keep that clear and effective?
Simplify things where possible. Really listen to concerns. Use the right tools like radios during an incident, as the guide mentions.
Active listening is key.
For sure. Listening to concerns, using radios to keep everyone coordinated. It's about fostering that open communication and teamwork. Explain your strategies for that.
And last but not least, they'll definitely ask about your previous security experience.
Of course. This is where you tie it all together. Highlight the duties, achievements, anything relevant from past roles that shows you can maintain safety and manage a team.
Like supervising patrols or ensuring protocol compliance.
Yeah, like the guide's example. Be specific about your experiences and directly link them to how they've prepared you for this supervisor role.
Okay, wow. That's a really thorough look at the kinds of questions you might face. But the guide doesn't stop there, does it? It also gives some solid advice on researching the company.
Absolutely. And doing your homework on the company beforehand, that can give you a serious edge. The obvious starting point, as the guide says, is their website.
What should you look for there?
Well, their history, mission, values, culture. But specifically, look for anything about their security practices or policies. Sometimes it's in a corporate responsibility section or maybe news updates.
And the guide has a smart tip about language.
Yeah, pay attention to the words they use when they talk about security. Try to mirror some of that language in your interview answers. It shows you've really paid attention and understand their perspective.
Good tip. Okay, what about social media? Is that useful?
It can be, yeah. The guide suggests checking LinkedIn for things like company size, locations, employee roles, maybe recent growth.
And other platforms.
Twitter, Facebook, they can give you more of a feel for the company culture, their values, maybe how they talk publicly about security stuff, if at all.
And the tip here is,
Consider following them. Shows interest, keeps you updated, simple but effective.
right. And it's not just about this company, is it? You need context.
Exactly. Know what's happening in the wider security industry. What are the current threats, the trends, the challenges companies like this one are facing?
How does that help in the interview?
Well, the guide suggests relating these bigger trends back to the specific company. It shows you're thinking strategically, you see the bigger picture. That's impressive.
And finally, on research, don't forget the competition.
Right. Understanding who their competitors are gives you insight into their market position, potential challenges. You might even see how competitor security practices compare.
And you can use that.
Yeah, the guide suggests highlighting how you can help them stay competitive security-wise. Frame your skills in that context.
Really smart. Okay, so research done. What about walking in the door? What to wear?
Yeah, first impressions matter. And for a security supervisor role, professionalism is key. The guide is pretty clear on this.
It leans towards traditional professional attire, doesn't it?
It does. Think conservative. Dark suit, white or maybe light blue shirt, a sensible tie, polished black shoes. Keep accessories minimal.
And grooming.
Also important. Clean hairstyle, light on the cologne or perfume neutral is best. Tidy facial hair if you have it, clean nails. The guide generally advises against visible tattoos or piercings for this kind of role. It's about projecting that professional, detail-oriented image.
Makes sense. It's all part of the package. Exactly. Okay, so we've covered the security-specific questions, research, attire, but the guide also flags some common interview questions you should be ready for.
Yes, the classics, like why are you interested in this role?
Your motivation question.
Yeah, be ready to talk about your passion for security, how this role fits your career goals, why this company specifically.
What about why did you leave your last job?
Honesty and professionalism are key here. Focus on positive reasons, like seeking career growth, new challenges, better opportunities. Avoid negativity about past employers.
And if you've changed careers,
Similar approach. Be honest, show self-awareness, explain your reasons clearly, maybe seeking new challenges, aligning with different interests, again, looking for better opportunities.
okay, how do you handle pressure?
Yeah.
We touched on this with the scenarios, but as a general question.
Talk about your strategies, staying organized, prioritizing, communicating clearly, keeping calm. Maybe give a brief, non-security specific example if you have one.
And the multitasking question. Can you handle multiple responsibilities at once?
Yep. This is where you highlight your prioritization skills again, delegation if appropriate, time management. Use specific examples. In my previous role, I often had to manage X, Y, and Z simultaneously by doing A, B, and C.
Right.
Show, don't just tell.
Great. So that really covers the main points from the guide.
Yeah, I think we've done a pretty thorough deep dive here. We've looked at strategies for those tricky interview questions, the value of good company research, and even the finer points of professional presentation.
Hopefully the examples and tips we've pulled out will really help you feel more prepared, more confident going into that security supervisor interview.
Definitely. And maybe a final thought for you to chew on. Think about which of these areas needs your focus first. Is it practicing those scenario answers? Or maybe diving deep into the company's website and news?
And also consider this.
Yeah.
How can a really solid grasp of security principles, the stuff we've talked about, help you in other parts of your professional life, maybe even outside a specific security role? It's probably more versatile than you think.